It is 1953. You are stood at the kitchen sink at 6:10 in the morning. The house is cold. The Ascot heater is hissing. Your husband is still asleep upstairs. You have 40 minutes to get yourself dressed, his breakfast laid, his shirt ironed, and the front step whitened before the woman 3 doors down opens her curtains and starts watching. You have 15 rules to follow today. You do not remember being told most of them. You just know what happens if you break one. I have got 15 of them in this video. Some will make you laugh. A few will make you furious. And the last one is the reason none of this was ever really about manners. Now, before we dive in, tap that subscribe button. You will not want to miss what is coming next. Between 1945 and 1960, British women were handed the most peculiar reward for winning a war. The women who had built Spitfire fuselages at Castle Bromwich and driven ambulances through the Blitz were told the job was done. Go home, make his tea, iron his shirts. What replaced the wartime independence was not a thank you. It was a contract nobody signed. The rules were never printed in a single book. They did not need to be. Every woman on the street already knew them. And the woman at number 47 was always watching to make sure. 15. The doorstep had to be donkey stoned before the street woke up. The donkey stone. A cream or brown block the size of a thick bar of soap. You bought it from the rag and bone man or the hardware shop for a few pennies. In parts of Lancashire they called it the rubbing stone. In the mill towns of Yorkshire, it was just the stepstone. You were on your knees on the cold front step at 6 in the morning, bucket of water steaming in the air. You scrubbed the stone across the step until it was a uniform cream or red-brown edge. Some women added a half-moon pattern along the pavement. Your knees went raw through your housecoat. The smell was wet stone and vim. Every woman on the terrace did it. Not doing it was a public announcement. A dirty step meant a dirty house, and a dirty house meant a woman who had let things slip. Neighbours noticed within the hour. The donkey stone disappeared when they pulled the terraces down. Nobody makes them anymore. The judgment, though, that travelled down the generations intact. That was the front of the house. The back was worse. 14. Monday was washing day, and the neighbours kept score. Not a day you chose. Monday. Fixed. Universal. Non-negotiable across most of working-class Britain. If you were lucky enough to own a washing machine, it would be a twin tub with a mangle bolted on top. You lifted the clothes from the boiling water with large wooden tongs, fed them through the rollers, and dropped them into the spin dryer. The whole kitchen filled with steam. Whites washed first, then coloureds as the water cooled. If your whites were not pegged on the line by 9 o'clock Monday morning, you were talked about. The whiteness of the sheets was a public performance. Women leaned out of back windows and assessed the neighbour's line. Smalls were hidden in the middle where nobody could see them. The schedule was rigid. Monday wash, Tuesday iron, Wednesday mend, Thursday market, Friday bake, Saturday clean, Sunday church. You did not deviate. Today, the average British household runs their washing machine 5 times a week on whichever day they fancy. Nobody on your street has the faintest idea when you do your laundry. In 1954, the entire terrace knew by breakfast. 13. You never hung washing out on a Sunday. Even if the rain had ruined Monday's wash and you were a full week behind, you did not hang laundry on a Sunday. The line stayed empty. The clothes stayed damp in the basket by the copper. You went to church in your good coat, came home and cooked the roast with the Yorkshire puddings and the gravy. The wet laundry waited in the scullery until Monday came round again. Hanging washing on a Sunday was a class marker. It told the whole street you had lost control of your week. In the chapel-going communities of Wales and the industrial north, it was considered close to sinful. Your mother would have said something. Your mother-in-law would have said considerably more. God rested on the seventh day, and so did the mangle. This next one might make you smile, because every family had one of these rooms, and nobody ever sat in it. 12. The front room was kept for best, and nobody was allowed to use it. The front room, the parlour, the best room, antimacassars on the armchairs, china ornaments lined up on the mantelpiece, a glass cabinet with the royal Doulton that nobody was permitted to touch, net curtains drawn across the bay window. The carpet was hoovered daily, but rarely walked on. The fire was only lit at Christmas, for the vicar, and for funerals. Meanwhile, the entire family lived in the back room. 6 people crammed onto one settee with the telly and the coal fire. The front room sat empty and immaculate 5 yards away behind a closed door. Children knew not to go in there. Nobody told them not to. They just knew. Today, most new builds have open-plan kitchens and no separate rooms at all. Your grandchildren will never understand the idea of a room you owned but were forbidden to enter. The front room existed to prove to anyone who might visit that you were a respectable household. The fact that nobody ever did visit was beside the point. 11. The net curtains had to be white, and they were never just curtains. Washed in dolly blue to keep them brilliant white, starched with robin starch, ironed flat on the kitchen table, hung so they draped evenly across every pane of the front window. A yellowed net curtain was a confession visible from the pavement. The nets were your front window to the world, and the world's front window into you. They did not just block the light, they kept the neighbours' eyes out and your reputation in. In the 1950s, those nets were armour. By the 90s, they were mocked as the mark of the curtain twitcher, the nosy neighbour. The woman who kept the whitest nets on the terrace was respected. The woman who stood behind them watching the street was feared. Often, they were the same person. Now I want to pause the countdown for a moment, because something worth noticing has already happened. The first 5 rules have nothing to do with husbands, not one. They are about other women. The surveillance was horizontal. Neighbours policed neighbours. The judgment came from the street, not from the man in the armchair. He did not care about the donkey stone. He never once checked the nets. But the woman at number 47 did. She had opinions, and she shared them at the co-op counter on Tuesday morning. 10. You dressed properly and did your face before he came home from work. The 5 o'clock transformation. You had been scrubbing floors and wringing sheets for 9 hours. Your hands were cracked from vim and washing soda. Your housecoat was damp from the copper. But at 4:30 you went upstairs, opened the Max Factor compact, dabbed a touch of Yardley lavender behind your ears, changed into a clean pinny, and tied a ribbon in your hair. Domestic guidance of the period told women to take 15 minutes to rest, so they would be refreshed when he arrived. Touch up your makeup, put a ribbon in your hair and be fresh looking. He had just been with a lot of work-weary people. Be a little gay and a little more interesting for him. His boring day may need a lift, and one of your duties is to provide it. That advice was printed in household manuals, sold in ordinary shops on ordinary high streets. A calm and cheerful demeanour after 9 hours of unpaid manual labour every single day of the week. 9. His dinner was on the table the moment his key turned in the lock. Not dinner in 20 minutes, not dinner when it is ready. Dinner now. The meal was timed to his shift pattern down to the minute. If he walked through the door at 10 to 6, the plate was already at his place at the kitchen table. Liver and onions, toad in the hole, shepherd's pie with a bisto crust, tinned pilchards on toast if the housekeeping was running thin that week. He got the biggest portion. He always got the meat. In many working-class households, the father had bacon and eggs for his breakfast. The children got porridge. The wife ate whatever was left in the pan. If the meal was late, it was not a mishap. It was a moral failure. It meant she had not planned properly. It meant she had not cared enough. He sat. She served. He ate. She cleared. Every night. For decades. Today, the average British family spends £11 ordering a takeaway on a Thursday evening. In 1955, she built the whole week's meals from a tin of corned beef and a bag of potatoes and never once sat down to eat at the same time he did. You could not be late with his dinner. But there was something else you could never do, and this one still makes people angry. 8. You never discussed money, and you never asked for more. The housekeeping allowance was handed over on a Friday evening. Sometimes it was placed on the mantelpiece without a word spoken. £2, 10 shillings. £3 if you were fortunate. Out of that came all the food, all the cleaning products, the children's school shoes, the shilling for the gas meter, the Coleman's weekly delivery. She kept a biscuit tin on the kitchen shelf or a purse with compartments. Rent money in one section, food money in another, the electric in the third. Asking for more money was an admission of failure. It meant you could not manage. Women hid the shortfall. They ate less so the children could eat properly. They darned socks until the darning was thicker than the original wool. They bought broken biscuits from the corner shop because they cost half as much as whole ones. Today, the average UK household spends over £60 a week on groceries alone. In 1955, she was running an entire household on £3, and she had no legal claim to a single penny of it. She was the financial manager of the home, with no authority, no contract, and no say whatsoever in what came in. 7. The children were scrubbed and silent before he walked through that door. Faces scrubbed pink with a flannel wrung out in the kitchen sink. Hair combed flat with a wet comb. Clean socks pulled up to the knee. Shoes paired by the back door. Toys put away in the box under the stairs. The house had to look as though children lived in it, but had never once played. The rule was that children should be seen and not heard. It was not a gentle suggestion. If a child ran screaming down the hallway when Dad's key turned in the lock, that was her failure. She had not managed them. They were performing for him. She was directing the performance, and the performance had to be flawless every single evening without exception. Now I want to pause the list again because the numbers tell you something the etiquette rules never did. By 1955, a working-class British housewife was putting in an estimated 75 hours a week of unpaid domestic labour. No holiday pay, no sick leave, no pension, no career to fall back on. Should she find herself in a loveless or violent marriage, she was trapped because she had no income and nowhere else to go. It was still unusual for working-class women to go to university. Most would never earn an independent wage again after the wedding. The etiquette was not politeness. It was economic infrastructure. The system did not fail. It worked exactly as it was designed to work. 6. You never contradicted him in company. At the pub, at the church door after the Sunday service, at a neighbour's kitchen table over tea and Garibaldi biscuits. A wife did not offer a different opinion. She did not correct his version of events. She did not interrupt him mid-sentence. A wife was considered respectable only so long as she agreed with her husband without question. If she did speak up, there was a look across the room. Other wives noticed. It was discussed on the doorstep the following morning. She has got a mouth on her. She does not half give him a hard time. The social cost was always hers to pay, never his. Her thoughts were not forbidden. They were simply treated as irrelevant in any room where he was also present. 5. Girls were trained for every single one of these rules at school. Domestic science, printed right there on the timetable in black ink. While the boys filed into the woodwork room to make toast racks, the girls were sent to the cookery kitchen. Secondary moderns, grammar schools, it made no difference. All of them prepared girls for a life of domestic service. Lessons in cookery and household management, darning and mending, how to iron a shirt collar without leaving a crease, how to blanch vegetables and lay a formal table, how to budget a weekly shop down to the last farthing. The textbooks read like training manuals for a job that came with no wages and no notice period. You were not born into this life. You were built for it, lesson by lesson, year by year. By the time you were 14, the curriculum had already decided what your future looked like. They trained you for the kitchen. What nobody mentioned was that the moment you married, you could never go back to anything else. 4. You gave up your job the day you got married. The marriage bar. This was formal policy, not informal custom. Banks, the civil service, the BBC, the teaching profession, all of them operated official marriage bars requiring women to resign upon marriage. Barclays Bank did not abolish theirs until 1961. The Foreign Office held on until 1973. One day you were a valued colleague with a desk and a Friday wage packet. The next day you were somebody's wife, and the desk had been cleared for the new girl. Women hid their engagement rings at work. Some postponed the wedding date just to keep earning a few more months. One woman recalled online that her mother worked for a bank in the late 1950s. She had to get written permission from the bank just to become engaged, and then she had to resign the day she married. The marriage bar was not made illegal anywhere in Britain until the Sex Discrimination Act of 1975. Some of you watching this video had already left school by then. Some of you had already been shown the door yourselves. 3. You could not open a bank account without his written permission. This still shocks people who hear it for the first time. Many banks in Britain required a married woman to produce a letter of authorization signed by her husband before they would allow her to open an account in her own name. Not in the 1850s, in the 1950s and 60s, and well into the 70s. One woman recalled that her grandfather died suddenly in 1963, leaving her grandmother a widow in her 40s. The bank account was in his name. It was frozen for months. She could not access a single penny while she grieved and raised the children alone. That was not unusual. That was ordinary life for millions of women. It was not until 1975 that women in Britain could open a bank account and apply for credit in their own name without a husband's signature. Independent taxation for married women did not arrive until 1990. The Berlin Wall had already come down. Margaret Thatcher had already left Downing Street, and British married women were still not taxed as individuals. Now look at those dates for a moment. The marriage bar ended in 1975. Bank accounts in your own name, 1975. Women being served in pubs without question, 1982. Independent taxation, 1990. These are not Victorian curiosities from a dusty history book. These are rules that applied within your lifetime. Your mother lived under every one of them. Some of you lived under them yourselves. 2. You never spoke about what happened behind closed doors. Whatever happened inside the house stayed inside the house. Arguments, debts, illness, violence. You did not discuss it with the neighbor over the garden fence. You did not tell your own mother. You certainly did not mention it to the doctor. A bruise was explained away before anyone could ask. A broken wrist was an accident with the mangle. The GP did not press the question, and you did not volunteer the answer. The phrase was simple. you made your bed. If the marriage was brutal, you lay in it. If the marriage was lonely, you lay in it quietly and without complaint. Silence was not silence. It was etiquette. It was what a decent woman did. 1. If he was violent, you stayed, because the law gave you nowhere else to go. No bank account in your own name, no career to return to, no right to a mortgage, no independent income of any kind, and no refuge to walk to, because women's refuges did not exist in Britain until Erin Peatsey opened the first one in a terraced house on Belmont Terrace in Chiswick in 1971. Before that, there was nothing. The church said, stay. The law said stay. The family said stay. The neighbours said nothing at all because they were following rule number 2. Marital rape was not recognised as a crime in England and Wales until 1991. A woman's right to refuse her own husband was not written into British law until the same year Freddie Mercury died and the Soviet Union collapsed. The etiquette was never about manners. It was a locked door with no key on the inside. And for millions of British women, the lock did not change until they were already old. Subscribe to the channel and watch the next video to keep these stories alive.